What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another week and another episode of Unscripted. We're bringing you professionals from all walks of life. We touch on their backstory, their mindset, and how they navigate through adversity and opposition. As always, I'm your host, Akeem Haynes. Before we get into this week's episode, do us a huge favor. Head to Apple Podcasts, Apple iTunes, Chartable.com, or even Spotify, and leave a rating and review of the show. This small act truly goes a long way in moving the podcast forward. It takes 3 to 4 minutes, if that, right? So if you could do us that huge favor, that would truly mean a lot to us. This week on the show, she's a former NCAA champion, a 12-time first team All-American, a part-time chef, and a professional hurdler for Asis. Payton Chadwick joins me on the show. Originally from Springdale, Arkansas, she grew up a Razorback fan. Later down the road, she would attend the same school that she grew up supporting. In this episode, we talk about her journey from battling back from injury this season. Yes, she started this season hurt. Not only this season, but going into Olympic trials last year as well, too. But we get into that. We talk about how she quiets the doubts, how she found courage to ask for help. And this is such an imperative part of this episode because we can't do life alone. And Payton, how she describes why she needed to ask for help. I thought she articulated that beautifully, and we can all learn that, I know, for myself as well, too. We talk about her success at the University of Arkansas, right? We talk about how her faith has helped her stay grounded, finding self-worth and the value away from the sport. That is such an important piece. Spoken to many different athletes, and me being a former athlete myself, it's so easy to think that what we do is who we are. And so we talk a little bit about that and why it's important to find value away from what you do. We talk about how she handles stress. We talk about how she started cooking and developing her culinary skills. We even talked about maybe 2024, 2025, 2026, somewhere there. Let's just say a cookbook is in the works. So we got to be on the route for that as it comes in the future. We talk about why progress is more important than perfection. Another great topic that we touch on, and we talk about so much more. Man, Payton is good people. Man, she's honest. She's transparent. But what I really like that she said is she wants to use her platform to encourage, to uplift, to inspire, and to give information for those coming behind her, and essentially any room that she steps into. And I believe that she is doing just that. So without further ado, enjoy this week's episode, Payton Chadwick. Payton.
Hey.
What's going on?
Nothing much. How are you?
Not too bad. I saw you were laid out on the track the other day. What kind of workout was that about?
Yesterday? Since I've been injured, I haven't been able to do like sprint workouts. So yesterday was like the first time I was able to do like a sprint workout. So I did 2 200s at 90% and then 2 150s at 90%. So I was dead after the 200s.
I don't miss those days at all. But before we touch on that, Payton, let's start off like this. You know, I'm always big on gratitude, right? If we can start the day in good spirits, then we can get momentum to do whatever is next. Well, give me 3 things you're grateful for today, Payton.
I'm grateful for, of course, the Lord and Savior. I'm grateful for my husband. And I'm grateful for just the abilities that God has given me, to be able to be on the track and be a light in other people's lives, like the younger ones that are looking up to me. That's what I'm grateful for. You
spoke about an injury, and I don't think a lot of people understand. I mean, that's the kind of the way how the story goes, right? You don't know what you don't say. You found the strength to push through. But as you just mentioned, you just started training again, being able to train at a good capacity. What was that injury, Payton? And from what I understand, you were kind of hurt before Olympic trials as well, too. That's crazy when you think about it. You're still able to perform. So walk me through that whole process, because, man, injuries suck.
Okay, will do. So first of all, I trained all through COVID. So no breaks during COVID, stayed on the track. And then I actually went overseas for 4 meets during COVID, which was crazy. And I guess since it didn't feel like a real year, we just didn't take much time off to go into 2021, about a week off. And so we went straight into hardcore training again. And I was already in great shape, so I was able to move forward with those tough workouts sooner and quicker. So then I got to January last year, 2021, and just something didn't feel right. I didn't ever feel a pop, but I just could not sprint. So I got an ultrasound and they were like, oh, you have a grade 2 hamstring tendon tear. And I was like, okay. So we took 6 weeks off, came back, and coming back, it was still just not the same. Like I felt it in all my pushes. I couldn't accelerate. I couldn't really push off that leg. And so I got an MRI again, and it was still a grade 1, but it was middle of the season and trials were in a month and a half. So I was like, well, I'm just going to push through. So pushed through, ran a personal best at trials. It didn't fit. My leg did not feel great. Went overseas twice. There were some days where I couldn't even warm up, but I was like, well, they're telling me it's good. So I'm just going to push through, keep pushing through. Then finally took a break, 6 weeks off before I started the new season, this season, and switched coaches. And then we started training. I was able to do the low intensity stuff, but the second we tried to sprint, I still couldn't do it. And I'm like, what the heck? So I got an MRI again. The tear was still there. So that's when I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to really take a step back, or this is gonna be forever just bothersome. So rehabbed for 6 weeks, came back extremely slow. Like I've been sprint training for like 6 weeks now, but not the kind of sprint training that would like get you really prepared. So yesterday was my first like sprint day in a long time. Hurdles, that's different, because hurdles, you don't have to really open up your gait, I guess. You can kind of shuffle in the middle. So hurdling doesn't hurt as bad, but those sprint workouts where you have to like really do that. So that's kind of what I've been dealing with. Now I deal with the tendonitis side of it, but the tear is healed. So I'm just happy I can finally move forward.
You know, it's what you just said is it's not as easy as most people may think, as you make it look like from a mental standpoint, right? Physically, we can push through. Physically, humans, we can endure almost anything, but the mindset and the frame behind it. Like I remember, Payton, the year before I actually ran well post collegiately, I ran 6:51 in the 60 to open up, but I didn't start training until December. And I'm there watching all my teammates train. I'm just like, yo, these guys are rolling. Speed work, looking sharp. They're looking crispy. I'm like, yo, what is going on? I'm on the grass. I'm thinking to myself, yo, is this even worth it? Like, what is going on? Did you ever have those moments, Payton? I think we all do at some point, but how did you mentally stay encouraged to get up for the day?
Yeah, 100%. For me, I can't be there, like being at practice and seeing your teammates like progressing is really tough for me. So while they were practicing, that's when I scheduled like my rehab time. So it felt like I was still training at the exact same time as they were, but being there just took a huge toll on me. I would show up every now and then, and I watched their races and I would encourage them, but just being there was too much. So I did that. And then just knowing that it'll get better. It just takes time, and I have to trust the process and continue to do the rehab that sucks, the small little things that suck, and just keep pushing through, even though it feels like you're getting out of shape every single day. But that's kind of what I did. The first time around. The second time around, because I moved out to North Carolina, when I had to rehab for 6 weeks, I went back to Texas with my husband. And so it kind of got my mind off of everything. I was just working out, rehabbing every day, trusting the process, working with Jerica Thomas. I don't know if you know her. She's a PT through USATF. But just knowing that it's not going to be like that forever, that it will get better.
Galatians 6 verse 9, right? Do not be weary for doing good, for at the proper time you reap a harvest if you don't give up. But Payton, I want to talk about the pandemic real quick, right? Because the way you said you trained all the way through, and as an athlete, you don't really have, like, especially track, I've never heard someone say, oh, you're like, I'm sick today, I can't come in. You don't have sick days, right? But the pandemic taught us a bunch of different things about ourselves. What did the pandemic teach you about you?
I had to make a big decision because at the time, that's when I was at Arkansas and all the facilities closed down like they did everywhere.
Yeah.
So we didn't have access to, the weight room, the track, really nothing. So that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to move to Texas where my husband's family is from, because it's in a smaller town and they know like all the athletic directors, coaches. And so I had access
Everything.
to a track and a weight room every day, anytime I wanted. So I was like, okay, well, I'd never trained by myself or on my own. So that was the first time I'd ever done that. And I shocked myself. I was able to go out there and push myself, put the work in, because when I came back to Fayetteville, I was in just as good shape as my training partners that stayed behind. Yeah. So I was like, okay, wow. Like I didn't know that I could really get to that level, because it's hard when you're on your own out there, especially track workouts.
Sometimes you just need somebody to die with you, so you win it together. You know
exactly.
what I'm saying?
Exactly. But there was a little high schooler that pulled me through. He went to a smaller college, but boys are stronger. So he pushed me through a few workouts. So that was helpful. But yeah, I just really grew in like my confidence in myself over the pandemic.
And you talk about earlier, one of the things you said that you are grateful for is to be able to be a light for the younger generation. Mm-hmm. But in order to know the full story of a person, I believe if you got to go back to a little bit about the beginning. So we got to go back to Springdale, Arkansas, Payton. What was the dynamics around you like growing up? Because from what I understand, you also have two other sisters. Mm-hmm. So what was all that like? Like what was... Never heard of Springdale, Arkansas, right? I don't know what's out there, but okay. Give me the dynamics of what you were seeing around you.
Okay. Springdale, Arkansas is about 15 minutes from Fayetteville, Arkansas. So I grew up a Razorback fan. I went to all the sports because my grandpa had season tickets for everything: football, basketball, baseball. So grew up around that, grew up going to the track meets and watching Wallace Spearman, of course. Mm-hmm. So always looked at him like, oh my gosh. It's not like a small town, but it's smaller feeling than Fayetteville. And Fayetteville kind of feels foreign to Springdale. It's totally different, even though it's only 15 minutes apart. But grew up there, did soccer. My dad trained me from 7th grade up until I left for college. So I have that dynamic, and we can go into that later if you want. I have two younger siblings, Olivia and Sophia. They both tried the sport thing, wasn't for them. They're super artsy. So Olivia does photography, videography. Sophie does, like, she can draw crazy things. And I don't know how.
That kind of works for you. That kind of works for all three of you right there.
I guess so. Yes, for real. Yeah, she's super artsy and does her thing. But in a way, somebody told me this the other day. They were like, well, you're kind of artsy because the way you take photos of your food. And I was like, okay, I guess so. You're right. The presentation of the food.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really it about Springdale. I mean, it's Chickendale. I don't know if that's where Tyson came from. I don't know if you know that, like the Tyson anytizers that you see in Walmart.
Yeah. Oh, really? Oh, okay. I didn't know. I know they were in the Arkansas area, but I didn't know it was exactly there. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. Payton, I'm always a firm believer that we can learn lessons from almost anybody and everybody, whether it's indirectly or directly, whether it's our parents, whether it's the community, whether it's the church, wherever the case may be. What lessons did you learn directly or indirectly from your environment around you? You talked about the dynamics of your father being your coach. Maybe there was a lesson there because there are some things that my grandmother, my mom, or those around me have told me that I stick with to this day and helps me get through certain things that I'm going through. But what lessons did you learn directly and indirectly during that time?
During that time with my dad, he really pushed me on, you know what, you have this talent, and I really think you can get to the next level. So in high school, I really think you can get to college. And I'm like, I don't know. Are you sure? I didn't really think so until my senior year of high school, even though I was winning all the events. I was going to Texas relays and doing really well. But he's like, no, you have this talent. And I was like, okay. So then I get to college and I'm like, okay, am I that good? Because I went to OU at first, and it wasn't the greatest experience. I didn't really grow a lot there. But I was like, okay, I have this talent. This doesn't seem to be working. I need to move on. So then I got to Arkansas and I started seeing things come together, because I've always been a hard worker. But I guess from all of that, it was like a process of believing in myself, because I guess I just didn't believe him. I didn't believe that I was good enough, because like I went from high school to college, scholarship, am I that good? But anybody else would have been like, oh my gosh, I got a scholarship. So that was a process for me, was just believing in myself. And I don't really think it happened until my 5th year at Arkansas. So it took me a long time to get to that point, because I was a hard worker, but other people were still beating me. And I'm like, this is hard. Even though like everybody believed in me, my parents, my coaches, my support system. So it took me a long time.
I read this about you in high school, Payton, an article that I was reading where you said you doubted whether you could compete with better competition. All right. And I'm thinking to myself, for me, especially in Canada, looking at different parts in Canada, but I never looked at Canada as this thing of, man, I want to be the best here. You got to start there. But I'm looking at these NCAA kids and trying to get a scholarship like anybody else. Right. So my mentality wasn't the fact of, do I doubt my ability that I can compete with them? It's just like, man, I just need the opportunity. I'm wondering, Payton, you said your parents believed in you, everybody believed in you. Why do you think it was so hard to believe in yourself? Do you think that you were focused more on the comparison around you, right? Judging that rather than your own abilities? Or do you think it was just like, man, I don't know. I just don't think I'm that good yet.
No, 100%. I definitely was way too consumed with what other people thought, what it looked like to other people. And like, I thought that I had to be competing a certain way for people to like me, I guess, like for my own parents, like, oh, you need to run this time, or, like they wouldn't text me, but that wasn't the case. Like they believed in me regardless. But for me, I just put so much extra pressure into thinking that I had to be perfect all the time.
The perfection rule. So Payton, you got to Oklahoma, right? And what I found interesting was the difference that you made when you transferred from there to Arkansas in your first year, 1307 to 1283. But people also know that you do all of the events, right? But in the hurdle section, what do you equate that big drop to? Because I've often kind of realized, the drops in our sport, it's not necessarily working harder. You have to work hard, but maybe it's a coach, or maybe it's a cue, or maybe it's a confidence thing. But what do you equate that big shift drop down to?
It was definitely coaching and my coach's ability to coach hurdles. And then it was also the competition. My biggest competition was on my own team. At the time, that's when I was a heptathlete. So, it was me, Leah Brown, Alex Gokenauer, Talia Brooks, and Kelsey Herman. And we were all we were all going to qualify for nationals. So having that is what pushed me into being a great athlete. 100%.
At that time, because when you got to Arkansas, you were 20, 21, around there?
Yes, 20.
In that time, as young adolescents, we're trying to figure out certain things, right? Like, who are we away from the track or from sports? And I don't think it is talked about enough when it comes to understanding a person's self-worth. That is a continuous journey for the rest of our lives, right? Because no matter where we are, the old us is inside of us. Who were you at that time, Payton, with your own self-worth? What were you doing when you weren't doing track? What were you thinking about yourself? Because you get to a new place, new environment, they see you on a track, everybody's coming out. But when it comes to self-love, self-worth, what were you telling yourself behind closed doors?
At that time, I was extremely consumed with track and field. I don't really think I did much outside of the sport, especially that year. That was 2016. No, because I was I was doing the hurdles on top of the multi and the 4x4 sometimes. So I was practicing longer than everybody else was. And I was just so exhausted by the time I got home. Like, I think I was just doing homework, going to bed, repeat. That year, I really did not do very much until I met my husband.
Shout out to him. Shout out to him, though, for opening you up to other things in life. You need that balance, though. You obviously had a very successful career at Arkansas. I mean, you won NCAA titles. You have records there. You won SECs. You've made a bunch of NCAA first teams. You've done a lot, Payton. But when you look back, like, what does that mean to you now? Because sometimes when we're in a reflective state, we look back and we're just like, it was cool back then, but I'm not there anymore. When you look back at all of that you've been able to accomplish, what is it? What comes to mind?
I mean, it was a great experience that I will never take for granted. When I look back, I see all those days of hard work and everything that we put in as a team at Arkansas. We had extreme high pressure there to win SECs because we always have that consecutive record of winning all the SEC titles in a row. And then nationals, got to be top 5 or you might get yelled at. But it was really fun. Now looking back, sometimes when I was in college, it's like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. This is hard. But looking back now, it was an extremely fun time. I enjoyed it. I made a lot of good relationships through the sport and through Arkansas. And I'm still able to have those relationships with some of those girls that are still on the team, even though I'm not there anymore. So, I mean, I enjoyed it, and it's definitely a part of my story of how far I've come from college and being overly consumed with the sport.
How do you balance comparison now? You're older than you were back then when you struggled with it, got some more experiences, more lessons. But is this something that still creeps in from time to time? How do you quiet that?
From time to time, yes, but not near as much, because now I realize that this sport is just extremely hard, especially in the US, to make a team. The goal was always Olympics. But then whenever you go to the trials and you compete and you make the final and you're 3 spots out, you realize it is tough to make the Olympic team.
USA is the hardest team to make, especially here.
Exactly. And Chanel, like last year, that's crazy. And she knows it's just a hard team to make. So now I'm just going to go out there and do the absolute best that I can on that day. I'm not going to go out there and I have to win this race or I have to run this time, because every time I didn't, I would just shut down and be upset and be off by myself. But now I'm like, no, that was just a stepping stone in the right direction, and it'll eventually come because I'm putting in the work. It's just not showing yet. So I don't compare near as bad. And then also my relationship with the Lord has grown a lot, because one of my, not training partners, but a girl in the sport, Desiree, she started our little Master Life group, and it was a 6-month journey. And I truly learned what it is to have a relationship with the Lord, where yes, before I had a relationship, but now I truly understand the meaning, and like there's no point in comparing yourself to others.
Because, my thing is, in order to even compare, we all have to start from equal playing ground. And it's never the same because we're born in different countries and different opportunities, born in different things. But the constant is our faith does help us get through a lot of things. And it's a double two questions in one, Payton. How do you define success now?
How do I define success? That's a hard question, because that's a question that I struggle with. Let
me go and allow you to think a little bit.
Okay.
When I was not in college, my whole life until I was about 25, 26, when I had a shift, because of my environment, how I grew up and the hardships that I had to face from an early age, I equated my success to circumstances, right? And for me, when I would go to run a race and I wouldn't win, or play football, I didn't get a certain amount of touchdowns, or whatever the case may be, or I failed a test, I was like, man, I suck. Like, I am terrible. I didn't come out here to do this. I'm letting everybody down. I'm letting myself down. And it wasn't a healthy balance. It was very toxic. It was very negative. But as I got older, I realized that the definition of success changes for every single person. And so if you allow the world to determine what success looks like for you, you'll always have an empty void. So it changes and it shifts as we elevate and grow as people, because success on the track is different than success in life. But when you think about what makes the wholesomeness of success, what comes to mind?
Kind of like what I was saying, I think just taking those baby steps and those steps in the right direction towards success, because success sometimes can be extremely hard to meet, because a goal or something of success could be like, I have to make the Olympic team and then I'll feel success. That kind of used to be my definition of success, but now I'm like, no, everything leading up to success is success for me.
That's good, Payton. That's good. Faith. It is a lot of people, and this is, and everybody's walk with Christ is different, right? And you hear it all the time when people use the word blessed. And generally, when people say the word blessed, there's usually a monetary thing that's attached to it. But that's not the meaning of blessed. I'm not there to tell anybody what that means, but in my humble opinion, that's not what it means. And in the darkest moments in our lives, whether you're dealing with injury or something that happens outside of the track, we all have low moments, and it's hard to have faith in a low moment, even though that's when we should double down the most, but we're flesh first. How has your faith helped you stay grounded and encouraged during all that you've been through, Payton? Because even right now, you're still working to get to where you know that that you want to be.
Just knowing that no matter what, Jesus still loves you. And even though I'm not doing, or I wasn't at the time when I was injured, I wasn't doing the sport, I could still be there for other people. Because I always have younger athletes reach out to me and DM me like, hey, can you help me with my hurdle form? Can you do this? So during that time, I was helping those athletes, and I'm like, wow, I'm injured, and they're still like looking up to me and still wanting that feedback from me and encouraging me to like, hope you get better. I hope you start feeling better, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's just, I had that. And just knowing that, like I said, eventually it'll get better if I keep pushing towards that success. And then having a group of girls where we could meet weekly and, pray, and having them pray for me, and actually opening up about that. Cause that was something hard for me too, is like asking for help. So like, hey, I have this injury. Can you please pray for me? I never did that in the past.
Why is that so hard? Where do you think that comes from? Why is this a challenge?
I think just because I put so much pressure on myself, I don't want to believe like I can get through it by myself. Like me, I don't need help from other people. But then I'm like, no, I need to let that go and invite people in my life, because relationships are important. And we just read the other day that your relationship with Jesus, you want it to be similar to how your relationship is with your friends and your peers. Like, you want to be open to them and let them in, because then they can help you.
Yes.
I finally just realized that.
Yeah, it takes time. I remember I was sitting in my room one night just trying to I must have been going through something. I don't even remember, because I was just thinking a lot. And it kind of brought me to why did Jesus send his disciples out in two? Like, he's Jesus. He could have snapped the fingers and everything would have been straight. But I'm like, why did he send them out in twos? And then you start to really think about it. It's too hard for one person to walk the journey alone. And he knows we need to be encouraged by other people, which why people always say environment and support makes a big difference. And it does. But the fact that you learn that now is you learn it now, so you don't have to learn it when you're 40, when you're 50. So it makes it a little bit easier. Another interesting thing, Payton, obviously people who follow you now, they know that you cook. They know that you're big into food. They know that you're big into health. But I also read that you were working on a cookbook, right? Where does the cooking come from? Where does this culinary aspect come from? What is the big thing with cooking for you?
I think I've always just had a really broad palate since I was little. My dad, would every day in high school, he would make me eggs, toast, and a fresh juice. So celery, apple, whatever. And all my friends, yes, with the juicer. I was a little bit spoiled, but he was so adamant on my nutrition, and I loved it too. So I appreciated it. So that kind of kick-started everything, just learning about nutrition in high school and then getting to college. And it's really hard to stay on that good nutrition, because you have the dining halls, there's unlimited food, there's cookies. So that's when,
What's your favorite cookies? You said that specifically, cookies. What's your favorite cookies?
I like snickerdoodles, chocolate chip, macadamia, any cookies, but I don't like commercial. So crumble cookies, no, don't like those. And they need to be homemade like that. But that's kind of how I got started. And people would notice oh, you kind of eat healthy. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of always been my thing. And I played around with different diets and those never worked. And so now I have a way better understanding of food. And now I want to help people with that, because people are always asking me what do you eat for breakfast? What do you eat for lunch? And so now I have that aspect of myself where it's not just track. I can help with people with their nutrition. So I love that I have that too, and not just track. I mean, the track kind of helps that, because, you have to eat healthy and stuff. But I also have other people that aren't in track that reach out to me. So that's kind of how I got started, just always having a background in nutrition from my parents.
Track is a platform for other things, right? And this is what I tell people all the time, and they don't always listen. But it's you can't get too high in one area and think that you're going to stay there forever, because even if the body's going to age out at some point, and you're not going to be able to do as well as you did before, because your body is changing. But let me paint this situation for you, Payton. So, you're having Payton's annual dinner, right? And your husband says, look, I'm about to run out, about to get some stuff. What do you need me to get? What are you preparing, Payton, for a group of 12 people? You have Payton's annual dinner cookery, right? What are you putting together? Give me appetizers. Give me the fresh juice, because people need the fresh juice to cleanse the palate, right? Give me the entree of what you're putting together.
Okay. Big groups, something easy would be fajitas. So we love making fajitas for our family. So you just got to marinate all the chicken in some lime juice, some pineapple, maybe a little bit of orange juice, a whole bunch of seasonings, cook it on the pellet grill and make some onions, some bell peppers, Then there's like there's this butter sauce that you can make. It's not as healthy, but it's good and it complements the chicken. It's a Texas thing, Tex-Mex. But for appetizers, I would do fresh guacamole with some seasonings and some chips. Maybe another type of salsa. It's called Texas caviar. Yeah, it's like chunkier salsa, and it's really good with chips. And then I would serve it with some cilantro lime rice. I make some really good basmati cilantro lime rice with some tortillas. If you wanted some flour tortillas, corn tortillas, cheese, all the fixings that you would add to fajitas. And then fresh juice wise, I guess, since it's Mexican night, you could kind of make a fresh juice, but make it a margarita.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Look,
fresh juice margarita, and you don't have to add the alcohol, but if you wanted, it would still be good.
Hey, that's an idea that you can put together down the road as well too. You could make a nice little business doing that right there. Payton, one of the questions I like to ask people all the time is, especially the athletes that do come on, is I always try and give practical things when it comes to transition, right? Transitioning from high school to college, from college to the pros, if that's so fit. From the collegiate ranks to the professional ranks, it's two different worlds. And I don't think many people realize it's two different worlds. What were some of the biggest challenges for you transition-wise from a collegiate athlete where essentially everything is there for you to you doing everything yourself? Did you struggle with that at all?
Yeah, I did a little bit. So at Arkansas, we were a little bit spoiled, and we had, our athletic trainers that were on the track with us every day. We were at practice, and we also had a chiropractor and massage therapist that would come once a week.
Nice. Jeez.
Yeah, so we would just line up, and the chiropractor would get us all right. Then the massage therapist. So then when I moved from college to pro, I'm like, oh, all this stuff costs money. So I can't be doing chiropractor, massage, physical therapy every single day, every week. So that's whenever you have to kind of learn on your own. Okay, I need to learn these exercises myself. Now I have to do research on the exercises because I can't go as much as I did in high school. So that was a big transition. And then also the travel, learning to go overseas, and you're jet lagged and you have to compete in 2 days. Like, what? And then the food is usually nasty. So like learning to you have to pack some protein stuff because there's always going to be a lack of protein overseas. So you're always going to be starving.
Yeah.
So just figuring all of that out the hard way. And then not having your coach overseas, because I had a college coach at the time. I do have a college coach now. So like warming up on your own, knowing the drills, like when you're setting up hurdles, I'm like, wait a second. He always sets the hurdles up. I don't know how many feet apart these are supposed to be. So just all those little things added up and can add a lot of stress and pressure, especially when you're at the meet and you're like, well, I don't know if I'm warming up properly. I don't have my coach. So that was the biggest thing, but it did get better over time.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I especially when I was out, in Phoenix, I was already self-sufficient in many ways on the track, because I used to just go to the field by myself when I was in high school and just work out there. But when I got to Phoenix and got to school, it's like, everybody's doing the same workout. And I'm like, wait a minute, this might not work for me. Like I may not get warm enough like you do. Right. So it's interesting, the correlation between it. Because the transition in anything is tough and it's challenging. Let me ask you this, Payton. Last two questions I have for you. Every season changes, right? Every season we learn something more about us, the people around us, or it's a challenging season. And that's why I always say, when people say every year is my year, I'm like, every year can't be a good year. Like, it's just not going to happen. But Payton, if you had to say, if there was a chapter to this season of your life, what would the title be? And give me a little context why.
Overcoming adversity and growth. So overcoming adversity and growing in that type of way.
Why those two? Break that down a little bit for me.
Just overcoming the injury, transitioning to training with a new coach, not knowing, like, because I trained with the same coach for 6 years. So then when you step into a new program, everything's new, from the warm up, the way you warm up at meets. So I was just a little stressed. And so overcoming that and just learning to trust the process. And then also with the injury, just growing as a person, not putting all of my worth in track and field. And then not putting that extra pressure on myself at meets, and not looking at, times that other people are running, like, oh gosh, like I need to be running those times. Just relaxing and learning that this is my story and it's already written, and I just need to keep riding that path and trusting the process.
I lied. Last two questions. The last two questions. How do you handle stress, Payton?
That's still a work in progress. I let it build up and build up and build up, and then I kind of crash. So I've tried to get better about that. Like I said, like talking to people, like letting people know, like, hey, I'm struggling, or this is what's going on. Can you please pray for me? So lately is just been being more open and talking about it. And that relieves your stress, because then the person can help you through it. My husband can help me through it. My parents, my friends, my discipleship group. So that's also something that I have learned to do this past year, is just let go and let people in and help me.
Wow. That is a powerful realization, because that's something that we think we can handle everything by ourselves, until we realize that even Superman and Superwoman both have reactions to kryptonite, and they don't do well with that. This season, Payton, I've been closing it out a little bit differently. For those that are going to listen, for those who know you, for those who may have seen your journey, been keeping up to it, whether they're from the beginning or they found their path towards supporting you later down the road, there's always things that we need to hear. And sometimes we don't know what we need to hear until we actually hear it. What is something that is on your heart as of recently, Payton, that you've been working on, or a message that you would like to share? Or for something that is on your heart, what would that message be? So close us out with the message, Payton, that is on your heart at this moment or this season.
Mm-hmm. Lately, I've talked to a lot of people just that are going through things in their lives, and kind of like what I've told myself in my journey is just to continue and trust that process, and that your story is different from everybody else's. So don't compare yourselves to others on their success, because like you said, everybody's definition of success is different. So maybe your success looks differently. So just to continue down your path and to trust the Lord, trust yourself, trust others that are helping you, and that everything will work out if you continue to work hard and continue to work on yourself and your relationship with the Lord, because that's ultimately what has helped me the most.
Payton, thank you so much for your time. You've been gracious with it. I really appreciate it. What is the best way for people to keep in touch with you? Is it Instagram, Twitter, YouTube? What are your social handles? And I know the cookbook. When give me, even if you don't know, right? Give me a date. 2024. Like what we talking about here? 25.
Maybe 26.
26. Okay. 26.
Yes, I'm going to be featured in somebody else's cookbook. I do know that, and I think that's coming out soon. She's a collegiate athlete at Duke University. She's got it figured out. She's already got hers going. I'm a little bit behind, but eventually I will get there because I definitely want to help athletes and other people on their nutrition.
Yeah. And the best way to keep in touch, Payton, what are your social handles?
Instagram for sure. Twitter, I'm on there sometimes, and I do have a YouTube. I don't keep it that updated, but I think it's Payton Chadwick, and then on Instagram it's Payday, PAYYDAYYY.
Payton, thank you so much for your time, and definitely, you got support from me and Chanel, absolutely as well too. And for real, if you ever need prayer, we're always a call away, a message away, Payton. So thank you again for your time. We appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you so much.